My father's funeral was yesterday, January 22nd, 2022. They had a time where they wanted people to come up and say stories about him. And I'll be honest, I just didn't want to get up there and start crying. That's the only reason I didn't get up there and say anything. I got a couple of stories about my old man. Ones that can go on the internet anyway. They said he liked to go fishing. Well, he did indeed enjoy fishing. He liked to do deep sea fishing. He liked to do fishing off the bank every now and then. He enjoyed boats. He enjoyed cars. He went through vehicles like a lot of people go through underwear. He just liked to change them every couple of years. I wonder sometimes how much money he would have saved if he'd have just hung on to one for a while. But, you know, what are you do in life? You got to do stuff you think is right and what you might or might not enjoy. Got to take care of all of it. He always had a decent running vehicle. Give him that. But let's see where to begin. He and his buddies had one of those boats and were out fishing. They were at the what do you call it? The Brazos State Park, I think it's called. Is it a Big Bend? Is it the Bend State Park? Brazos Bend State Park. That's it. They were at Brazos Bend, and they had a little boat. It was an aluminum bottom boat, but it was like a double hull boat. It was a nice little boat, little motor on it. He used it for just up and down lakes. It was him and a buddy of his. They screwed around, tried to fish. Nothing was biting really. And they saw, of course, Brazos Bend is covered in alligators, so no going in the water. They're putting around, and boom, the bottom of the boat raises up. And they're also stuck on a stump. That's something about Brazos Bend. It's not very deep, most of the areas out there, and swamp basically. So it's getting on towards dark, and they're putting around in circles with this boat trying to rock it off of the stump. It gets dark, and you know, you can't go in the water to push on anything. The alligators everywhere. So he took the spotlight, shined it out over the water. 100 pair of eyes all looking, staring right at him. And there's something about that just gives you a little more adrenaline. And him and his buddy, whoever the hell was with him, I don't remember who, rocked that boat back and forth and got it off that stump. and rode, used the motor to put over the alligators. They hit 5 or 10 alligators on the way out, just bumping into them, not hitting them hard, just to get out of that water. And got it up on that boat ramp. I don't know if they were in Brazos Bend proper or if they were next to it in another lake, but that's where they were, that area. So that's one story. Let's see, another story that he didn't really tell a lot of people. Negligent misfire. He was out hunting with his buddies and had a truck parked out, and he was in the bed of his truck, and he was trying to get ready to go that morning, and the rifle slipped out of his hand, but he'd already loaded it, and when he went to grab it, it set it off and shot a hole through his tailgate. He put a Christian sticker over it, and I remember a couple of years later, he went to sell that truck, and I said, "You gonna tell him about the bullet hole in the tailgate?" He's like, "Shut up, I forgot about that." Because we were at work when I said it. Oh, apparently he had kept that one to himself. Well, it's out now, man. It's on the internet. Let's see. I wonder what percentage of old trucks sold in the United States, or especially in Texas, have a bullet hole story. Probably half, I would imagine, more. There's something moving around in those leaves right there. Let's see, was there anything else? Well, one of the stories that the preacher told, which was a good thing I didn't try to tell it first. My father was usher at the church that we had a service in. 13 years. I didn't realize it was that long. But it's part of the reason they did the service there. He was there when it was a smaller church, and they had a gentleman come in who did entertaining for churches. He would do the singing. It was a real beautiful service that they would have. And right as they're coming in, the power goes out. Kablooey, kablooey, the transformer blows out back. Always on Sunday morning, right before you need it, right? And my father, he had a pickup truck at the time, a little Toyota, that had an outlet in the back. And they were able to back the truck up to the back door and run an extension cord and run a little practice amp and a light, a camera light, to get that show going for all the people in church. Very proud moment. Every guy wants to be the guy who saves the day. See what I mean? Just to hear my voice cracking is what I didn't want to happen at church. I'm trying to think there has to be something else. Let's see if I can think of something here. Just thought of another one. My father was in the military. He went to Korea to rebuild Korea during the Vietnam War. They had occupation type forces rebuilding parts of Korea. And that's what he did. He worked supply sergeant. He was Klinger. That was him. He was Radar O'Reilly and Klinger. He had that position where he kept things moving. He was the clerk for his unit. And he would be in charge of millions of dollars worth of equipment. And he was worried every time he went out there, it would get shot up. Because, he was responsible for it. If it gets shot up in a non-war zone, they just might come back on you. Of course, they had terrorist actions all the time. But before he actually went to Korea, he was out of basic, and he went to this airfield where they had thousands of guys. I don't know how many he said, but they had a whole division standing up there. Not division, I don't know what I'm talking about. They had thousands of guys standing on the tarmac. And then we went to each section, and they were calling out names. And everybody whose name was called had to go get in this other line to go get on a plane to go to Vietnam. And then everybody else would go to Korea to help with the reconstruction. And they called names and called names and called names and called names, and he was sitting there sweating, going to go to Vietnam, because he thought for sure that his skills and all this kind of stuff, they put him in Vietnam. Well, they said, that's it. And he looked around, about 2/3, 3/4 of the guys were gone. They were all going to Vietnam. And he looked around, and almost every single guy there had glasses on. And he found out later that was a sign. If you see pictures of a guy in Vietnam with glasses, odds are he either had a skill they really wanted, or he volunteered to be there, because they would take you if you volunteered. So, lesson learned. My grandfather gave him one piece of advice. He said, don't volunteer for anything. Don't ever volunteer for anything in the military. He said, that'll save your life. Apparently, my grandfather, that's a whole nother list of stories. I put those up on here before. When I was a kid, I was kind of a handful. I was legally blind. I was the weird kid that everybody kind of tolerated. I tried to be members of the groups. I was a social butterfly. But I was that weird kid that nobody really understood or got, I couldn't do a lot of things. I couldn't play ball. I could barely ride a bicycle. I mean, my father, I was not athletic. My dad was. He was an outdoorsman. He and I never got along because of that, I think. But he asked me one time why I wasn't jumping my bicycle on the ramp. And I said, well, to be honest, I'm afraid I'll miss the ramp and hit it with my pedal or something, because I had done that and flipped my bicycle over. I'd actually gone down the sidewalk, and they had the ramp sitting in the middle of the sidewalk, and I was wobbly, and I missed the ramp and hit to hit my pedal on the ramp, that kind of crap. I was scared of it. So he built me a sidewalk wide ramp. He said, well, it looks like you can keep your bike in the sidewalk, so I'll build you a ramp. And it goes both ways. You can't even go the wrong way. So it was a ramp that went up on both sides, had a little spot in the middle. He built it out of plywood. And it was all supported and had solid sides, and it had supports in the middle. I mean, there wasn't nothing going wrong with this ramp. And he built that, and he put it out in front of our house, and all the kids, all the neighborhood, streets away, all came over to jump on this ramp because it was the biggest ramp anybody ever built. Everybody else had, you know, a 2x4 sitting on a tin can, and that was a ramp. And there was looked like professional made, designed ramp. And one of the kids lipped off. There's 30 kids around this thing watching everybody jump. And everybody's taking turns, including me. And some kid lips off. How strong can it be? It's made out of plywood. My dad's like, hold it. He goes back in the garage. My mother had a Yamaha dirt bike. He grabs her Yamaha dirt bike and goes, turns around, pulls up the neighbor's driveway and gets a little run at it. He clears that thing about 4 or 5 feet in the air. Didn't even move, didn't flinch. Goomp, up it went. My mom's, I swear we have a picture of him in midair with that ramp motorcycle. It's a full-size street legal enduro. It was that 125 they had all those years ago. Jumped it, landed, pulled, went back up in the garage. And nobody said anything about how strong that ramp was ever again. And none of the neighborhood kids were allowed to play with my dad anymore. Wish I could have found that picture. But that was my old man. Heck of a guy. He provided well. He was a decent human being. Made himself better, and always tried to have an optimistic point of view, unlike myself. I wish I could have caught that from him. But you know, I am who I am, he was who he is. Never the twins shall meet. Alright, well, little insight to my father.